Welcome to the Landscaping Podcast. My name is Joel Barnett and I am your host. And in today's episode, I'm talking with Andy Murray from Andy Murray Landscape Design. Andy's a landscape designer based in Melbourne and he's got another unique path that he took to get into the industry, starting out working in childcare and then he made kitchen gardens there, realised he had a passion for that. So studied permaculture design and then went to Burnley for a bit more design before working for a couple of people, and then went into business partnership with one of them, and had a partnership for 12 years before going out on his own. So quite different to the way a lot of people got there, but yeah, that's one of the things I love about the podcast is finding out how people got to where they are and how there's so many different ways to get into the industry. And he's also got a background in music, like a couple of other talented designers I've had on before. So again, another kind of a recurring experience that some designers have had. And in the chat, he relates the similarities of how a bad singer can ruin a well-written song, and a bad landscaper can ruin a well-designed garden. So it was a good chat about that. And we also spent a fair bit of time talking about the challenges of designing to a budget and getting the real budget off a client and how you go about that. So yeah, I think it was an all-round good chat with Andy. So hopefully you enjoy this chat with Andy Murray. Andy, thank you for joining us on the Landscaping Podcast. My first question for you is, how did you start in the industry?
I guess my mum was very into gardens when I was a kid. And then when I left school, I wanted to be a musician. And I was, what job do I do? I liked kids. I worked in a childcare centre in Canberra where I lived at the time. And I started getting into growing vegetables at home and getting into permaculture and organics and things like this. And then I thought I might make a vegetable garden with the children. So I made a vegetable garden with the kids, which was really fun. And then I got really into the vegetable garden and started sort of forgetting about the kids a little bit, just a bit more focused on what I was doing. And then I sort of moved to Melbourne and did a permaculture design course. Then studied at Ceres. Do you know Ceres, the environmental park?
No.
Oh, just like a big environmental park in Brunswick. It's fantastic. I did like a certificate one there. We were basically building an organic garden, and then worked in that garden with a group of people. And then from there went to Burnley and then started working in horticulture. So really through plants is how I got into it. Was doing maintenance, doing garden restoration, working for two older women, and sort of went from there.
So
Yeah.
did you love the music carry through it all? Did you hold on to that?
Certainly has. Yeah, totally. It's my other passion is music. I still play a lot of music. I play drums. I've played drums for 35 years.
All right.
Um, yeah, I write songs and play and sing, and yeah, it's very fun. It's a
Yeah.
great thing,
Yeah.
but
There's
very
so
hard to make a living out of.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's more yeah, there's not many that do. And the ones that do don't have much of a life outside of it because whenever you're wanting to do something with friends, that's when you usually were working with the
that's
music.
it. Yeah, totally. And you've got to stay up late, and I'm really not very good at staying up late. I figured out pretty quickly. So, okay, but that's good. I'm happy.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, because it's fascinating. There's so many coincidences with people who like are in design and they've got a certain another creativity that they had when they were younger or on the
Yeah.
side. And yeah, and music has shown up a couple of times.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like if you're creative, you're going to set it to anything. It's sort of a way of seeing the world. It could be film or ceramics or music and design makes sense.
And
Yeah.
I had Jim Fogarty on last week, and he went to Burnley with some other well-known people. So who was there when you were there? There always seems to be.
I actually listened to that and I've got no idea who was there.
You're the first
I was,
person who said that.
yeah, well, there you go. I could make some names up, but I don't know how old these people are. So I was there like a day a week. So I was working a lot outside of it. And then I was there a day a week and I was there a day a week for sort of 4 or 5 years doing it very part-time.
Yeah, right.
I feel like because of that, I wasn't like in the crew
Yeah.
um, that you're following through all the way through. So I met a lot of people, but I feel like I don't know any, famous designers who I can tell you about that I was there with that I know of.
You've ruined the streak of
Yeah,
people.
sorry about that. Paul Bangay, Joe Ferguson. Back it up. I don't know.
Jim Fogarty.
Jim Fogarty, he was there. Love Jim Fogarty.
So once you got the qualifications done, what did you go to? Where'd you go then?
Well, I sort of did it in a way. I sort of did it slowly. I feel like the benefit of becoming self-employed in this industry is I feel lucky. It's not like a business where you suddenly have to get a whole lot of equipment and get a shop and have a massive outlay, take on a whole lot of staff. I worked for some people doing horticulture and restoring gardens and working in beautiful gardens, here in Mount Macedon and beautiful old Edna Walling gardens, and got really a horticultural education. That was sort of like my apprenticeship, and I really learned so much through that, along with the Burnley stuff. Yeah, I guess I sort of gradually became self-employed. So I guess I took on probably designed my first garden when I was like 25 or something, which is 25 years ago or something. But yeah, sort of took on bigger and bigger jobs. It was probably like a $10,000 job, and that seemed extraordinary to me at the time. And then, took on something a bit bigger and got out of my comfort zone and just I was building gardens as well, doing paving, doing a lot of soft landscape and doing a lot of horticulture, and then would just reduce the amount of time I was working for these people. And then slowly ended up starting a business with the person who was in that partnership, one of the women. So she was sort of 20 years older than I was and very horticultural and artistic. And we got along really well. And so it sort of evolved that we started the business together. And I had that business for sort of 12 years before I was just me. So we had more people working for us, and we would do soft landscape installation and irrigation. And then we would look after a lot of gardens. And I did a lot of design through that. And a lot of the gardens got built in different ways. So
What
yeah,
what was that company called?
it's called verdigris.
And did you get other people coming in to do any of the hardscaping?
Yeah, so we had a few people working doing the hard landscape. We'd get sort of like a stonemason, like a stonemason. Michael Maristoker is a guy, I don't know if you know him, he's a fantastic stonemason from Profile Stonemasons, I think it
Oh
is.
yeah.
Yeah, he built a few of our gardens, and we would do everything else, and then he would maybe build a deck, but he would do all the paving, and then we would do all the soft landscape. And I guess I sort of thought a horticulturalist doing the soft landscape was a nice thing. I feel like it was done with a long-term perspective in terms of doing it very thoroughly and preparing the soil very well and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, so it sort of evolved in that way.
So
Yeah,
then what was it that made you go out to on your own from that?
on my own. I
Yeah.
mean, we were very different ages. So she's 20 years older than I am. I think I wanted to do my own thing. I probably we had different ideas. So it was probably that sort of partnership thing of just having different visions. And in the end, I just wanted to do my own, I guess. And I also just wanted it to be like I'm quite enjoying. I mean, I loved having lots of people working for us, but I love the simplicity of it just being me. And every other person I deal with is another business like you. It's like they're a landscaping business. They do what they do. They do it really well. They work for the clients. I just sort of facilitate that. And I like the simplicity of that. It's fantastic.
And was there any fear of going out on your own, or you sort of
I think
gradually
there
rolled?
was for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Yeah. It was terrifying. I mean, I'd been doing it for 12 years, so I was very used to the familiarity of that. So yeah, it was scary, but I'm very glad I did it.
And did you have to do anything different to start getting work coming in directly to you, like do any advertising or anything like that?
Yeah, well, I wanted to do it differently, and that was probably part of it. I think our ideas of how a business should be set up were different too. So, in terms of branding and building a website and your sort of identity and the way people perceive you, and how you present yourself, I feel like probably a bit different ages. I saw the value of that, and I feel like it's so worth investing in all of that stuff because people don't necessarily know you personally until they know you personally, and you can prove yourself in that way. That it's how everyone sees you. So I spent money on branding and had some great graphic design people who did all of that, sign writing and websites and business cards
I do
and
like your logo actually.
oh, thank you.
That does look very nice.
Yeah.
It's simple, but yeah, it's just I don't know something about it. I think that looks really cool.
Yeah, it's very much like an upside down Volkswagen sign.
All
And I've
right.
got a Volkswagen, so it's sort of, but it looks good. It's fine. Yeah. Yeah.
So, and then did that relationship end well, and you were sort of like getting her to do some of your projects, and she was sending any designs your way, or just
I would say no would probably be the answer to that. Yeah. I feel like it was tumultuous. It was a long time. There was a lot of history, and it was also like we had people that worked for us, and you're going one way and the other person's going the other way. Yeah, it was sort of second only to the breakup of the Beatles, I think it probably was. But all good.
it's not
Yeah.
ideal.
No,
No.
that's all right. Good.
But yeah, but obviously worked out in the best for you because you've got a
Yeah.
beautiful project now.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
So how like when did those awesome projects start to come in soon, or did you have to sort of start at the bottom again and work your way back up?
No, they sort of started to come in, like I feel like it didn't really skip a beat much. It was sort of just rolled on. I guess I knew a lot of people. So I was pretty busy straight away. And I was doing, like most of the design in the other business. And I was designing and managing the business anyway, but just with more people. I had less people to manage, but I still had design work and a business to run. So I feel like it really, relatively, as much as I could have hoped for, relatively seamlessly went into the to just me, which was good.
And have you ever had any employees since then?
I have two people. So I guess because my background is horticulture, like really plants were where I came from. And so we looked after gardens. So I want to look after the gardens that I design. I don't want to leave. The worst thing for me would be to design a garden and then get to the end of that process where you're sort of finished with the clients. To me, that's the start of the garden. It's the start for them. It's the start for us. So guiding it through and having a long-term relationship with people. So I have two people that work for me who look after gardens who are lovely, and I work with them a day a week. So I'm still doing that, and then I'm 4 days a week doing everything else. And it also gets me out of an office chair and out and about and communicating with people. So that's good.
Yeah, nice. And so are they doing the maintenance 5 days a week, and you just jump in with them
No, they
once?
just do it a day a week.
All
Yeah,
right.
yeah. So that's, and yeah, I don't know what I'm gonna like whether I don't even know if I want to build that up, I guess. Like whether I'll just maybe it'll be 2 days a week or Selena is very lovely. Selena and Alexi, they're lovely people. One's sort of a musician, makes hot sauce the rest of the week. And then Selena works for Amanda Oliver and then works for me a day a week. Yeah. So it works out well. So yeah, so they know the gardens and I work with them and they're lovely and it's good.
Yeah, nice. And
Yeah.
what program do you use for your designs?
I use AutoCAD.
Do you do any
Yeah.
hand drawing at all?
No, but I used to. That's how I started. Yeah. So back in the day at Burnley and when I first started designing gardens, it was all hand drawn in a drawing board.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. And I always liked hand drawing. I feel like a garden should look like a garden. I feel like a lot of garden designs look very sterile.
Mm.
So I feel I've sort of adapted something a bit weird, probably. Like this thing is my Wacom tablet. So I use what an illustrator would use, and I use that in AutoCAD. I used to do it in Photoshop, but it was just totally annoying. But I do it in with hatches, and I use outlines to sort of make the planting section look more illustrative. So I'm putting transparency into hatches and making it look like sort of like a hand drawing. So it's green and it looks a bit illustrative.
Yeah.
So that's how I do it. And then yeah, I use Photoshop. I do that, and then I use Photoshop for elevations to drop in sort of photos of plants, plant heights, and all this sort of stuff, and sort of to present that side of it. And then I outsource the 3D, which
Yeah.
works out really well to someone who can do it fantastically well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And so
exactly.
much quicker, and you don't have to have massive computers to run it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
Because I
yeah.
imagine, because I use Landworks CAD, so I assume it's a similar thing where you actually it has got the capabilities to do 3D, but there's a
Yeah.
lot difference between having capabilities and being able to do it.
Sure. So do you do it or you don't do it at
No,
all? You
no,
outsource it all?
I
Yeah.
haven't even looked into it. So it was hard enough for me to learn how to do 2D on it, and like I've got a Vectorworks license, but I don't know how to use it. So
Okay.
and because it would just you need to sort of commit to learning how to do it, and I don't have the time to commit to that to spend a couple of weeks just doing designs on that.
Yeah.
So, but so have you used that from like after doing hand drawings, you've only been with AutoCAD?
I've only ever been with AutoCAD. Yeah, I sort of I guess I did a bit of it at RMIT, and then I did a bit of it like a CAD. My partner is Canadian, and so we were living back and forth between here and Canada for a few years. And so when I was over there, I had a bit more flexibility, and so I did it as part of a engineering degree over there. I did the CAD section, and because I had so much time that I could really focus on it and sink my teeth into it, that really helped.
Yeah,
So. Yeah, and then I just did sort of refreshers at RMIT for certain things that I felt like I was struggling with, but it's just time doing it, I suppose. I'm not sure if I'm even using, 30% of what it's capable of doing, but it works well for me and sort of what
yeah,
I need. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. There's a lot of things you can do with a shovel as well, but most of the time you're just digging a hole with it. So,
That's it.
like,
Interpretive dancing, stuff like
yeah,
that.
it's
Yeah.
it's got those capabilities if you need them, but uh,
Yep.
yeah, makes sense. So, did you have relationships with contractors who you were getting to build your designs from that previous business that you
Before
carried through?
that, no, I sort of started again in a way, and I sort of intentionally started again.
Yeah,
um, Even though I knew people. And I think like one person we were using had stopped working. So there was a guy called Wayne Daly who was great. He built a few gardens for us. And then so he built one, but then he started the pool business. So he wasn't building gardens anymore. And so I sort of yeah, it made sense to meet new people. So it was nice to sort of start fresh. And I met Josh and I met a few other people and got them to build some gardens, which was a nice thing. But yeah, I feel like in a way, when my name had sort of changed, there was a few projects that I had right at the beginning that I was trying to get people to cost, and they just didn't really know who I was. So I feel like it wasn't high on the priority list to, you know.
yeah,
So yeah, once you people know what you're doing and sort of who you are, I guess to some degree, they're a bit more keen to work with you. So just makes everything easier.
yep. Now that was
Yeah.
Josh Norman Landscapes who built one of your early ones.
Yeah, he did. I think he built one sort of 4 or 5 years ago. And we've worked on a few since then, and we're doing one at the moment. We've got another one booked after that, and he's fantastic.
And I saw on your Instagram Bow Grange build a
Yeah, they
couple.
did. They built a garden in Middle Park. They're fantastic as well. They're excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you had them on?
No, actually, but I should because yeah, it's weird. There's so many. It's like I've had so many people on, and I've always been trying to think of new people to have on. And then
Yeah.
there's companies like them who I've admired for years, who
Yeah.
I just don't think of because they don't see like that. You never. I don't know who. Like, there's no face that you see part of the
Right.
business.
Right.
But but
Michael
yeah,
Callahan, his name, isn't it? I talked to
yeah.
him.
But I know
Yeah.
Scott, who used to work with him a bit. He told me I should get him on.
Yeah. I think
'Cause,
they'd be good.
yeah. Well, I love just about everything that they produce. So
Yeah. They're very business minded too, and they're very good, and their quality is incredible, and they're good to deal with. Very
and
thorough.
good branding as well.
Yeah, really. They take that stuff seriously. It's good.
So do you have when people contact you, do they are they asking for recommendations on who to for someone to build it, or they wanting you to do that? And like, have you lost any jobs because you can't do it?
Because I can't do it. No, I haven't lost any jobs because you mean because I can't do it myself
Yeah,
or
yeah. Like they don't ring
no?
up saying, "Oh, we want someone to build and design, or we want the one person to do both."
I don't know. Maybe like in the really early stages, but I feel like not usually. I mean, I feel like everyone to a certain degree has to sort of educate the person who's ringing them up to let them know how they work and what their process is. So I feel like as time's gone by, I've been gradually more and more clear about exactly what my process is. And if you want me to do this job, you want me to design the job for you, then I sort of feel like there's no point in designing it well if you're not going to get it built well. So I push that because I think like I want to produce work of high quality. So I feel like you've got to know what it's going to cost to some degree. You've got to know what you're in for, although it doesn't always work out that way. Yeah, so I feel like I push that in a nice way. You need to work with a good landscaper. I will suggest some that are suitable for the project. They'll work for you. I'm there to sort of facilitate. I'm usually around to sort of manage the design details that need to be resolved on site. Yeah, so that's sort of what I tell people.
Do you visit projects much throughout the build?
I do, yeah. So I'm pretty involved. I usually try to go out. Like I think I mean, it depends who's building it, if it's someone really fantastic, it's great. But I feel like some landscapers are much more used to working with designers than others. They know, I mean, communication, quality of work is amazing, but also communication as like if they need to deal with something or something to resolve, it comes to you first. There's options. You then work it out together before it's taken to the client rather than, what about this and what about that? It might not have been what you'd intended, and it might be something you really don't want. There might have been a different way that might not have been a more expensive option, but you feel like it's more in keeping with what you intended. So, yeah, I think that choosing the right people to collaborate with, I always sort of say, back to the music stuff, I guess it's sort of like the designer is the songwriter and they take the song to the band. And if you're choosing the right band, it's like choosing the right person. If you've got the right person to do it, it'll just happen naturally and you'll collaborate in a joyful way and you'll get it done and it'll lift the song. I feel like a great landscaper will lift what you've done and should, but the opposite is sort of true.
Yeah.
It'll be dragged down in a different way. And it's
That's
a like if it's the wrong person, it's a battle. And it shouldn't be a battle, it should be a joy. That's why you're doing it. It's a garden.
yeah. That's an awesome analogy. Because
Yeah.
yeah, 'cause it makes perfect sense because someone a bad contractor can ruin a design and bad.
Yeah, they absolutely can. Yeah.
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 Have you been asked to like get quotes off? Like, do you recommend to the clients to get multiple quotes for projects, or do you just?
I generally don't. Like I mean, it's not because I'm lazy about it. I sort of feel like I almost think that you should get the contractor, and I might be doing this as well, is getting them involved early, choosing someone who you feel is the right person for the job. I feel like you're better off either building less of a garden or reducing what you're putting in the garden and having it built well than you are building the whole thing poorly with someone who's not going to do a good job. I feel like it'll cost more long term. The results won't be good. So yeah, I'm usually saying let's get someone involved, get one quote, and work with them, and they're the right person. But I think a lot of the times people say we'd like to get two quotes. I feel like if they're wanting to get three or four quotes, I feel like perhaps they're not the person for me.
Yeah.
If you're trying to shop it around to whoever, then there's not an understanding of, it's not about just the price. It's what you're going to get and what they've allowed for in that price. Because I feel like also if it's been underquoted, there's also a battle to get it done within the price that they've quoted rather than they've allowed enough for it. They can sit with it and do it really well. So yeah, I think generally one, usually probably two quotes.
Yep. Are you
Yeah.
getting budgets off clients at any point in the design process?
Yeah, I get a budget at the start, and I feel like I wouldn't want to design something without a budget. Although I say I can't design to an exact budget, which I
Yeah.
can't. So I always say, a really cheap garden will be soft landscape, will be plant driven, it'll be gravel, it'll be rock retaining, as minimal hard landscape and detail as you can put into it. You don't want to be putting in barbecues and arbors and complex steel work. So I want to keep that as simple as possible. But in a way, that's not the garden that people necessarily want. And it's not necessarily the garden that people come to me for.
Mm.
So I always say, like, you get a brief and you get a budget. They don't always align. In fact, they probably never align. So I've got to make them happy in terms of what the design is, but it's got to be somewhere realistic. And so it's finding where that is.
And do you talk to a contractor and get them to price something up before you present it to the client so you know that you're somewhere within the budget?
No, but I'm going to next time because
Right.
I feel like things shift. Like, COVID, there was big price increases. I feel like there's been more price increases recently, materials going up. I feel like my sense of what I talk to people about and what I say a budget will be is sort of lagging behind because you never know. And so I feel like it'd be good to get to at least have the option to say to people, because I do sort of a preliminary stage, which is sort of like a detailed concept, I suppose. It's basically just the garden I think that they want based on their brief. And then it'd be good to cost it there. But so I was talking to Josh about doing that, and then they're sort of the engaged contractor, and at the end, there's no surprises. But I feel like also, if you have a full design and say you've got crazy paving or something that's a bit more expensive, I always say, but when you cost it, you can always remove those elements and change them to gravel, or lights are often the first thing to go, or certain things that are a bit modular that you can change to suit the budget, or you can stage it. So always communicate that to people so they feel like they've got an option and they're not sort of spending something money on something that's a bit useless.
Mm. Something I've found a struggle when you're trying to work towards a budget is trying to give the client options as well. Like, is they might say my budget is $100,000, and
Yeah,
you come up with a design, and then you talk with Josh, and he's like, you send it to him and say, and he says it's worth 150. So then you might change it and take some things out and dial it back.
yeah,
Then there could have been something in that that blew the client's socks off that
yeah, that's right.
they would have been happy to pay extra
I
for,
know.
but they don't
Yeah,
know about it.
I know. I think that's very true. Absolutely. And you
So,
want to do your job. Like you want to, I sort of feel like if you're designing something, you should get their brief. The ultimate that you should do is come up with something completely that they don't expect, but that they love and makes perfect sense for them. But they didn't think it was how they wanted to approach it. I mean, that's your job.
mm,
So yeah, I agree. There's got to be an element of excitement and surprise, and sometimes people are more willing to stretch, and maybe 100,000 is not their final budget. So
yeah,
it's just sort of reading it and getting a sense of it. But yeah,
yeah, because people have got no idea what landscaping costs. Like people who work in the industry and have done for more than 10 years have got no idea what things cost until you actually price it up. So it's
yeah,
perfectly understandable for clients to have no idea. So yeah,
it's
unless they've got a finite amount of money to spend on it, then
yeah,
their budget it can be anything.
I know, absolutely. And everybody wants to spend less on something, if you
Yeah.
can get it for a bit less, like it makes sense.
But yeah,
Um,
that's something I'm looking to do if I was doing more design, like focusing more on designs, is potentially give the client two concepts. This
okay.
one would be meet your budget, and this
Yeah,
one
okay.
I think is awesome.
Yeah,
But then they can sort of pick and choose out of it. But you need to sort of allow enough time to, because then you know that you're going to be redoing another design,
I know. So would you
merging.
just charge, because you've got to get the design job too, would you just charge more to do that? And
Yeah,
then
yeah, yeah.
if you think,
That'd be something I'd sort of learn as you go. You kind of need to allow enough, and then when you do one, yeah, then you can tweak. I didn't allow enough for this, or it works well, um,
yep,
but
you
yeah,
can
just
make,
to not sort of underwhelm or overwhelm the clients, you can give them
yeah.
the options. Then again, sometimes there's too many options.
Well,
But
sometimes I feel like choice is too many options too. Like
yeah,
I feel like it's like giving option, not in a nasty way, but giving options to a toddler. I feel like you've got to guide these people through the process. You don't want to be like, do you want the fruit or do you want the, chocolate bar?
yeah, because that could be something again that it comes back to um, being a good designer. You would talk to the client and find out what they want, what's important to them. So then
Yep,
you just give them that one design that meets what they want.
that's
And
it.
so
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
just learning as we talk through this. I am so
Yeah, that's sort of what I would generally do. And I think I always sort of say, yeah, then you can remove things if you want to. But yeah, beyond there, if you really need to revise it, I feel like often if it's way above what we've discussed, then there's probably an element of shock from people, and it's like it's never going to get across the line because it's so far above. I feel like costs have just gone up,
yeah,
and like I feel like $100,000 used to be my you would start at $100,000. That's like I live in Northcote, maybe a standard Northcote block would be $100,000, but I feel like 150 is more like a starting point. I feel like I don't design many gardens that end up being less than 150. It's always
yeah,
more than you expect. So
yeah. Something I find difficult about being in the industry for as long as we have is that like 100,000 used to be a lot, and now it's not.
it's
Like,
not, no,
and that's staggering to
it's
say that.
extraordinary, isn't it? Yeah, that's
But
right.
yeah, we had a job where the clients, their budget was, I think it was 150 grand when I was doing the design. And
Yeah,
then I did this design and this was, yeah, a few years ago. So I thought, this is 150 grand. That's a great budget to work with. So I'll do all these cool things in there. And
yeah,
then I quoted it was like 300 grand. So
Okay.
then I dialed it back, but they ended up spending 250, like
Okay.
when it all
Okay.
got locked in. So
Sure.
so yeah, it can happen. Like because when you
Yeah.
show them these options, if they've
Yeah.
got the money, then they're happy to go with it. So
Yeah. That's
it
it.
can happen.
In the end, it's like often it's when I get a list that's the brief, it's like we want one of these and one of these and one of these and one of these and one of these. And we live on a 1,000 square meter block. The scale of it adds up. And you put all those things in, and those things, if you're going to do them well, I'm always sort of say, you can probably get someone to design a garden cheaper than I easily find someone to design a garden cheaper than me. You could probably easily do the garden for $70,000, but what would it be? It would be a very different thing. And you've got to pick the person as much as you've got to be comfortable with them, they've got to be comfortable with you, and you've got to be in the right sort of price bracket. They see the value in what you do and the experience you have, and they're willing to pay what you charge for doing that, and what it makes sense for you to charge to do that. But you can certainly get much more expensive than me, and probably much less expensive than me. And that's okay. There's lots of work for everybody,
Mm,
and there's different people that suit different clients.
yep. Yeah, you need to realize that you're not everyone is your client.
That's right. Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
just had a project that we did a little bit of work on there, but the client's going to do most of the work themselves over the coming years. But they
Right.
said that the value that the money they spent on the design is the best money that they'd spent because
Okay.
now they've got something they can work towards.
Yeah.
And I tell clients that all the time as well. Like you're better off designing something that you're gonna love rather than what you can just all do all in one go. Because
Sure. Yeah.
if
And
you're
you've
gonna
got
live in
to.
there for 10 years, then you might
Yeah.
as well enjoy it rather than just doing what you could afford 10 years ago.
That's right. And then you've got a consistent master plan to work towards as you can afford it. As someone who, for you, as a landscaper who also designs, how do you feel about someone like, are they building it themselves with another landscaper, or are they building it themselves?
Themselves.
Have
So
they got any skills in building, or
not really, no.
okay? How do you feel about that?
It doesn't bother me. I love it actually.
Do
Like I
you?
think
Okay.
yeah, I think it's awesome because um no, they're going to be doing a bit of crazy paving, and I'm very particular on the way crazy paving gets done. So, like, I
Yeah.
won't look at it and thinking, "Oh, that looks amazing." I'll think it looks horrible, but
Yeah.
the but it comes down to their own personal taste. Like, if they love it, like, what does it matter what I care about how the crazy paving looks? Like, I don't live
Yeah.
there. Like, I
No, you
say,
don't live there. It's true. But I guess why I'm saying that is like I've had jobs that I've designed that then have they couldn't afford the costing that the landscaper that I got them to do. So they've got someone way cheaper to go and build it. And I feel like invariably when I've seen what they've come up with, I've been slightly horrified because I feel like, but as well as that, they've been really happy. And that's the funny thing. It's like if that's what they thought what I was envisaging, then I guess that's good on one level because they're happy. But on another level, like there's so much detail in how you're going to work it out and put it together. Yeah, I feel like I should care because the way that the crazy paving is built and the way that it links with everything else and all those elements in the garden lift the garden to be something else. But I guess like they can afford to do that and it's fun for them and it's a joy and that's also a nice thing.
yeah, I think if it was another landscaper doing it and did a horrible job, that
Yeah,
would bother
sure.
me.
Yeah, yeah,
But
makes sense.
But the fact that they're doing it, I love when people get
Yeah,
take their ownership of it.
yeah, yeah.
And I think that can be an issue with some architects, not so much landscape architects. You don't see it as much, but with house architects, whereas they take a bit too much ownership on a project, and if the client might want to make some changes,
Yeah,
and they'll just keep fighting them against doing it. And like
yeah,
there's one thing to be the professional, and you've been paid to do it, so they should possibly go with your opinion. But
yeah.
again, the architect doesn't live
Like,
there. It's not their house. So like
no, absolutely. It is, yeah, it's their house. It's ultimately it's their garden, it's their house. They should be
mm,
able to make those choices. But I think, I mean, I've worked with lots of different architects, and I feel like I met one recently who was sort of said, all you can do is suggest the options at that stage. This is what I suggest. I think this would be a better fit. This is what makes sense to me. If they ultimately don't choose that, that's all you can do. You can't battle them for it. Yeah, it's their house, it's their garden, but also they've they've engaged you to advise them based on your experience, and you should be advising them. And in a way, they should be listening to you to an extent. It's
Yeah.
not, you know, you don't want to tell them everything to do, but why hire a designer if you're not going to listen to a degree?
Yeah,
You know?
it's not like the client has paid an architect so that they can tell them what they want. It's supposed to be a bit of the other things. They should tell them what they want, but then the architect gives them that presentation. So just
Yeah,
because they're paying for it, it doesn't mean that they can boss the architect around either. That's
yeah,
it.
absolutely.
But
Yeah,
that's where the going with someone you get along well with is important in that situation.
hugely important. Yeah, it is. And you don't always know. I feel like you get a sense when you first meet someone, but you don't always know how that's going to work out. And it's a very intimate thing, and that can be a lovely thing. You know, and I've got people that I've known for 15 or 20 years that we still see in their gardens and they get such joy out of it, you know, or it can not be quite as nice, you know.
Mm. Have you had to walk away from any projects? Like not so much after they've agreed to it, but they just weren't the right fit for you after you met them, or
Yeah, I only recently, only in the last little while, in the last couple of months, I walked
all
away
right.
from one. Yeah, and it was not an easy thing to do, and I've never done it because once I'm in it, I feel like I should stay there till the end. But I guess I felt like it had been going on for 2.5 years, the design process, uh, which is extraordinary. And I just felt like there was going to be no end. And I felt like I have to get out and cut my losses, whatever that means. So, yeah, it wasn't an easy choice to make in the first place. And you don't want to let anybody down. It's not ideal for anybody. But some of them just don't, you know, I sort of feel like 97% of my projects are wonderful, you know, like to degrees. And really, it's 3% that perhaps don't work as well.
Mm.
But in a way, I'm doing the same thing again and again. You know, I've got the same process. I'm the same person. I'm going through the same thing with everybody. So I think it's that thing you were sort of saying of certain clients and some people just want to make more changes and I think want to be more in control and don't are not as comfortable letting go and saying, you're the designer, you just take care of it. And that's really, I think it's that simple.
How do you go with changes? Like, do you give out a schedule of rates saying like, this is what the design will be. If you want to make changes, it costs this much, or how does that work for you?
Well, I do like I do what I said, a preliminary plan. So that's like basically the whole thing without specifications for a landscaper to build. So it's an elevation to plan, a 3D render if they want that, and then all of the plants are there. I feel like I can't design a garden without the plants. It's really about the plants.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's a lot of detail in that. So changing it is hard, but I feel like it's the risk you take for presenting something that's more developed to a client because I feel like they have a stronger sense of what it is, and maybe my theory is they're less likely to change it because they know what it is, and I try to really go through what they want. But I factor in what's like 2 rounds of changes at that stage. So I present it to them. We go through it, we talk about it. I say, if you need to talk to me about any of the details, give me a ring or we can have a chat. And then they make any changes, usually I think within sort of 3 weeks or a month if possible. I feel like if it drags out for longer than that, they've sort of forgotten about it and they're not in the zone. They've got to almost relearn what the design is. And I feel like it can then get way more complicated than it needs to be. I feel like when it's fresh, it's much better. Yeah, so they make the changes and I put those changes in the final plan. That's included in my initial fee proposal. And I feel like, yeah, it's important if you're providing a fixed fee service to be clear about the parameters of your work. Like I say, once you've done those changes, you're allowed to make changes and you should make changes. Once we've done those and we've signed it off, if there's any changes beyond that, it'll cost more and it'll be a revision and I'll need to cost what that revision is. So that's how I do it. Yeah. Because then they're not coming back to you saying, oh, can you just change that's this little plant? Well, you know, often I feel like if it's really plants they're changing, it's almost too much, you know, like saying, can we move this plant to here or move that plant to there? I feel like it's not a good place to be. It's sort of like getting a painter and saying, can you just move that brush over to there? No, it's the broad that is what I think is important at that stage.
Yeah. How did you go when you first started out charging for designs, like knowing whether to charge enough?
I think I just did it. I didn't really know how long it would take. I probably just charged way too little. and didn't value myself, but I was new to it and didn't really know. So I feel like it just evolves as you get more skill and you know sort of where you're placed in the market and you know what you're going to a certain degree, what jobs you're going to get based on what you're providing fee proposal for. Like if you do, 5 proposals in a week and you don't get any of them and that keeps going forever, you've got to do something. Yeah, so I think it just sort of evolved.
Yeah, I was charging $770 for designs when I started. 'Cause that's what my boss was charging. But that was 20 years ago. He was charging that. But I thought,
You just
and
thought
that
that's large.
yeah, and that would have only been maybe 6 or 7 years ago, maybe.
Wow.
And I had a
Okay.
guy complaining about when I presented the design that it didn't have any 3Ds with it. He said, I got a landscape architect friend in Melbourne, and they would provide 3Ds if they were charging that much. So okay, well, I don't think they would
Wow.
because I
Okay.
knew I knew it was too cheap at the time. So
Yeah. Okay. Wow. My 3Ds are more expensive than that. So there you
yeah,
go.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
just for one image.
I have 3D as an optional extra, and it's more
Yeah.
than that. So
Yep.
yeah,
And then so you just sort of it's shifted, I'm assuming, as you.
yes. It's
Yep.
funny because I put my prices up a heap, and
Yeah.
then realized that like I'm still cheap, I would say,
Yeah.
but um, but I realized that by putting them up, you get the type of clients that you want.
Yeah, you really do.
So
Absolutely. Yeah. I
yeah,
think I think it's almost it works against you in a way. If you charge too little and you're so much less, people might see you as comparable in terms of the quality of your work compared to other landscape designers, and they see you in that ilk. And then you put a fee proposal in and you're a third of the cost of them. They're like, "What's he doing? That's so extraordinary."
yeah,
Like if you got a quote for landscaping and it was way less, it would be a red flag, as they say.
yeah, yeah,
I can't be getting as much, and they can't. So people see the inherent value in what they're getting, and I work it out based on time. Really, is what I work it out on. I map, like I have a record of every design that I've done for the last 20 years, basically. So the one since it's just been me, I note all my hours, and then I put that into a spreadsheet, and that tells me. So when I am doing another fee proposal, I think what this is the size of it, this is the complexity of it, this is this sort of sense you get from of how complex it'll be. Are you dealing with architects? Is it heritage, or is there, do you feel like the client will be tricky or negotiation? So I just work it out based on that, and it works out pretty well. But I
yeah,
feel like it's a bit arbitrary. Everyone is that's why I think a podcast like this is so great, and listening to this podcast, because I feel like you see that everybody is working in effect independently, but so many of them are going through the same thing, and it's nice to know. It's good.
well, I haven't heard anyone say that they do that to go to that much detail with working out what it costs for a design. So, and
Okay.
I absolutely love that. I reckon that's an awesome idea to do. And it's something I wanted to do when I had a designer on is for them to keep track of how many hours they're doing so that I can understand in more detail how long it takes to actually do a design.
Yeah. And then also know, like, how long does it take to do a plan? How long does it take to do the elevation? How long does it take to present the elevation? I just write the task that I'm doing on those days. People say you shouldn't do it by the hour. You should be doing it based on somehow your inherent value. But I guess you work that in based on what your hourly rate is and what you feel you should be earning, and then working back on how much work you have in the year in your, revenue streams, as they call them, whatever that is.
Yeah. Hey,
Yeah.
and even just keeping track of things like how long it takes to go out there to meet them and then phone calls and just, yeah, if you
Yeah.
really knuckle down and realize how much time you spend on each design,
Yeah. It's
then people
interesting.
be charging a lot more, I reckon.
I think so. And even just negotiating, getting files from people, and I charge a consultancy fee to go out, and then everything from there I would map what I do, and it just helps me to work out what I should be charging. And I think it takes less time to do a fee proposal then, because you feel like, oh, this is really similar to this size job that I just did, that went really smoothly and it was worked like this, and so I feel like that's a reasonable amount to charge for it. And if it's not, then I didn't get it because I'm I feel like I cost too much, and that's okay too.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're busy enough, then that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, that's it.
Do you ever get to a point where like I do, sometimes I'm keeping track of how much I'm spending on a job and I get to a point where I know that I'm going to start losing money, so I don't want to know anymore, so I just stop keeping track. That-
Yeah, I probably do. Yeah, I'm sure. There's been a few doozies along the way. Yeah, you just give it up. That was it.
Yeah.
Racer.
So what can you see yourself doing in 5 years' time? Anything different to what you're doing now, or you hope to just keep doing exactly what you're doing and enjoying it?
Well, I do enjoy it for the most part. So I feel like one thing I would think about would be if the right person came along to do more design, that I would work with someone like that more regularly. I think part of designing by yourself for me is that it can be isolating. Like you're dealing with clients. I'm dealing with, I see people a few days a week and then I'm dealing with clients and landscapers and talking to people. But I feel like having that sense of community is a really nice thing. So I think maybe something like that. But I feel like I don't have any huge dreams to have a big business empire and have 15 staff designing around Australia. That's okay. I'm quite comfortable with that. I like the size that I am and I'm happy doing the projects that I do. I feel like it works pretty well. Yeah.
And do you have any designers who you get along well with and you like sharing ideas and catching up or anything like that?
Well, no, not really. I mean, a few that I sort of have we message each other on Instagram a little bit, but no one who I would chat with on a regular basis. I mean, apart from Josh, he does a lot of design.
Yep.
But we chat quite a lot, and that's really helpful. I think, to have someone like that is a nice thing because there's tricky things you've got to deal with, and it's nice. So yeah, I feel like
Yeah.
that'd be nice to have more of that for sure. Yeah.
And the last question for you, Anne, is who do you think would be a good guest to have on the podcast?
Well, I said a Vogue Grange might be good.
Yep.
Do you know Real Earth Developments in
No,
Flinders?
haven't.
I've worked with a guy called Marcus. He's like I've worked with him building some jobs in Merricks and Flinders. I feel like he really flies under the radar. He's not very Instagrammy and all this, but he's one of the best landscapers I've worked with. He's unbelievable, and I feel like he has a small great crew of people who are really good at what they do, and they do a lot of work down there, and not many people know about them. I don't know if he'd kill me for letting you know that he should go on, but I feel I would want to know more about him, so I feel like he'd be good.
Yep. Awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah, he could be the theoretical person I talk about when I say that the best landscaper might not even have Instagram. Like
that's
that,
it. Yeah,
just because you've got a big Instagram following, it doesn't mean that you're any good.
that's right. Yeah, he is very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a few designers that you haven't had on. So have you had Plume on?
No, but
I
again,
think
they're someone that I love their
yeah,
stuff.
I think that I'd be interested to know more about them. And Acre do fantastic work.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a bunch. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So there's so many good people to talk to in the industry. So yeah, if
there is.
I after doing this for only a few times, I said I could do this full time. Like I would love to do it full time, but
You also love landscaping, so you wouldn't want to stop doing that.
I could do a bit of both. I could do it
Yeah.
50-50, but
So
but you can't. But I've tried that before by not doing the landscaping fully committed, and you can't be half pregnant. I think you've got to do
that's
one or the
true.
other.
Yeah, yeah.
So, well,
My
then again,
parents, I think, said when I wanted to be a musician when I was in year 12, they said you've got to have a backup plan. And my problem with that is if you've got a backup plan, then you spend all your time on your backup plan and you can't do the real one.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, thank you so much for coming on, Andy. Absolutely loved having this chat. So I really
Thanks for
appreciate your
having me.
time coming on.
Great to talk to you. Thanks, Joel.